Easter comes every year, but sometimes it has an import imposed upon it from the outside that allows us to appreciate it better as believers. I'm Sebastian Gorka. This is America First on the Salem Radio Network. I think it's easy because we were all children once to fall into the misconception that for Christians, Easter isn't the most important, but Christmas is. We have those fond memories of toys around the tree and Christmas carols and feasting. And it's easy to forget that the high celebration, the most important season for those of us who practice the Christian faith, is the season which remembers what our Lord did for us, how he took all our sins upon himself, willingly, so that we could be assured eternal life. On this Good Friday, we are not running reruns. We will have a best-of selection from our times with Baron Boris Epstein in the third hour of the show. But we bring you original content for this hour especially. And it's an opportunity to reflect on things in a little greater depth and to get to know one of our friends and guests, regular guests on the program a little bit better. You know who he is. He's Horace Cooper. He is Senior Fellow at the National Center for Public Policy Research and with Project 21. Horace, it's good to have you in the studio.
It is great to be here in the program today. Thank you.
This few months we've been living through, I think, must force us to reflect deeper than we would otherwise. Not simply because we have perhaps time to do so, because we are at home, we are social distancing, we're having to work from home, those who are fortunate enough to still have work to do, but because of the nature of the national emergency that forces us to be at home. The idea of sacrifice, the idea of death and rebirth is all the more pertinent given what our country is going through, the theme of Easter and the eventual rebirth of this nation. Share with us, if you will, Horace, the story you shared the last time you were on the show, where I asked you, how are you doing as you walked in the studio? Are you surviving the corona insanity? And you said, surviving? I'm thriving. And it had to do with your childhood and a certain lady. Explain to us why this isn't a damper on Horace Cooper.
So my grandmother, Virginia Johnson, was a woman of faith, a very, very strong woman of faith. And she was a person who had gone through the Depression era period and understood that people who apply themselves, that people who make the right kinds of sacrifices are able to overcome any and all adversity. A lot of Americans know about the Great Depression. They know it as a historical event. There are still people alive who are living examples of that experience, but they're fewer and fewer and fewer. My grandmother did this during a period where it was lawful on the part of government to specifically target people on the basis of their race and deprive them of opportunity, of the aspirations that they might have. And so my grandmother could have looked at that circumstance and simply said, I give up. There is no chance. There is no opportunity. But she instead understood a truth that I think is a truth that is part of what America is. This is the place where people who apply themselves, who make the effort, are able to overcome. This country was founded not by people who simply said, everything has been handed to me. All things are I just look out and I'll put my hand out and people are handing me gold and silver. This country was made by people who applied themselves, and they looked out at a rugged, open space, and they said, what I see is possibility. What I see is potential. Getting on a boat and coming here to a land where you might never get to return, and you might not even make it days, was something that only exceptional people can. When we declared our independence, we did so against the greatest, most powerful nation on the planet.
Yes.
All the signs of what was possible would have said, don't do this, yield, set back, accept it. We are a country made up of people who say the exceptional is who we are. And so my grandmother looked at these circumstances. Her husband, he operated a dry cleaners. He was not allowed to buy the land or the goods that his company would offer as services to people. And he could have said, oh, I have this dream. I could be the best dry cleaning service in the county, but I can't buy property. What he did do was, however, convince individuals who were lawfully allowed to buy property to put the property in their name. And he paid them and he offered his services. And guess what? When looking at him and seeing what remarkable things he could do, they didn't say, I'm going to come and confiscate this. They sat back and watched, and he was able to prosper. My grandmother had 9 children. They ate every night a meal. They lived in a house. They ended up having indoor plumbing before many people on their street ever did. My point about this is my grandmother understood that if you apply yourself, if you make the effort, there's nothing that can hold you back. And my mother and father let me stay with her often during the summers, or sometimes even after during the school year, while my mother and father were pursuing either their education or their careers. And we didn't sit idly, my brother and I. She used that time productively.
Tell us the thing you shared with us last time about what time did your grandmother Virginia wake you up, Horace Cooper?
So she believed that you had to get up before the rooster crowed. And
so you were waking up the rooster, right? You got up to wake up the rooster. Time to crow, rooster.
And what was hilarious about this is, as you might imagine, my brother and I weren't used to this.
Getting up at 4:30.
Exactly. It was still dark outside. And thankfully, to this day, I am a morning person. Now, I'm not up at 4:30, but I am a morning person precisely because of that. And you will be amazed at what an advantage. The first time I really thought about it, I was at the University of Texas.
Hang on. Save that story. We'll keep our listeners on tenterhooks until we come back. We're talking to Horace Cooper of Project 21. Follow them at Project 21 News, Senior Fellow with the National Center for Public Policy Research. I'm Sebastian Gorka. This is America First on the Salem Radio Network, broadcasting to you from the ReliefFactor.com studios, live streaming on YouTube, on Facebook, and don't forget, you can get us audio on the podcast app, whichever one you use, and at our website 24/7, sebgorka.com, sebgorka.com. Back with Horace in a moment.
No violence, no hate speech, just happy warriors on America First.
I don't know who had the idea to bring Horace back for an hour on Good Friday. Must have been me, because it's a fabulous idea. I asked him one question. It was like the storyteller will now perform in the whole segment. It was just one great story. We love having him here. If you're looking for another great story, if you've run out of things to stream, I've got the answer for you. My colleague, my Salem co-host, Dennis Prager, has his new film available streaming. It's called No Safe Spaces. It is an incredible survey of what the left has done to our country and what it will take to bring it back. And he is co-hosting that film with Adam Carolla, and No Safe Spaces has a 99% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes. I haven't seen another, not even Blade Runner, my favorite, has 99%. So check it out right now. Go to nosafespaces.com and plug in our promo code SAVE25 for 25% off. You can stream it, you can download it, you can order the DVD. It's got amazing guests in addition to Dennis and Adam. They've got Jordan Peterson, Tim Allen, and Ben Shapiro. That's nosafespaces.com, promo code SAVE25. We are back with our good friend from Project 21 and the National Center for Public Policy Research. He is Horace Cooper. Horace, you were telling us another story.
Well, I was explaining that one of the first times it became clear to me that me being a morning person came as an
you're being
advantage.
made a morning person by your grandmother, right?
It's second nature now. But what came to me is I was a student at the University of Texas, and all of my friends and colleagues and contacts, they were all taking these 1 p.m. classes, 3 p.m. classes, 5 p.m. classes, and I was signing up for the 7:30 and 8 in the morning
They
classes.
had 7:30 a.m. classes.
52,000 people.
What was that, macroeconomics?
Well, that was one of them.
I bet it was.
That was one of them. But with 52,000 people,
Right.
you had to spread the day around. And guess what? Quite a few people didn't get their 1 o'clock, their 3 o'clock, or their 5 o'clock.
Right.
And so they were stuck in classes with me. But I'd chosen it voluntarily. That meant...
And you were awake.
I was awake. I was listening. I was actually in class. You'd look around, and again, 52,000 students.
Wow.
Many of my classes had 700 or 800 students.
So the guy who was awake taking notes, he became very popular, didn't he, Horace?
Well, he not only became very popular, but when he looked around and saw how few others were in the class, what it ended up meaning was I actually knew some of the answers on even the most difficult exams. And then when you factored in the curve, wow, I'd end up with an A or an A minus even in the most difficult classes, precisely because I was actually where I was comfortable at. And many, they had drank too much the night before.
They just weren't there.
Yes. So
thanks to Grandma Virginia and the Roosters.
Virgie Johnson really made a difference. And again, when I worked in the Bush administration, it turned out when I was chief of staff at an agency where there were about 4,100 people, or as former Senator Bob Dole would say, about half of them worked there.
And it doesn't mean they were working somewhere else. Right.
We had to do oversight and review for our workforce. Mm-hmm. I'd often schedule those performance reviews between 7:45 and 8:45 in the morning.
You're that guy.
Yes,
you are that guy, Horace.
And do you know how hard it is to dissemble and to lie?
At 7:30. There's no prevarication at 7:30. There's barely a lie for some people. This is a fabulous... So given that it's Good Friday, given that this is the Easter season, I need to go back to what you learned and the environment in which you learned it. And I'm just curious, because I'm getting to know you as much as our listeners and viewers are here on America First. The concept of hardship, the significance of sacrifice, and how you translate or transmogrify pain into something not positive, but something that has purpose. Was that explicitly explained to you by your grandmother, by your family, or was it just through dint of osmosis? Because today, as you very rightly point out, the option would be just to see yourself as a victim and say, well, I don't need to sacrifice. The hardship is my ticket to getting a handout. So how explicit were the things you learned? Were they communicated to you verbally, or was it through doing and witnessing what your grandmother or your parents did?
So we had a combination of both. I mean, my grandmother would regularly say, We don't take food stamps. We never have.
So it's explicit.
We never will.
Okay.
But on the other hand, she didn't have a washing machine. She had a washboard.
Washboard.
And my grandmother convinced my brother and I that the washboard that she used was too big for us. But if we did some extra chores, we could earn some money to buy smaller washboards. And my brother and I eagerly took up at her direction extra chores so that we could get...
Are you serious?
Yes. And when the little...
So you worked hard to buy your own Horace-sized washboard.
And when the washboards came, we celebrated. We were so
That's incredible.
excited. But it was good. It was good. It was a way of showing that if you can apply yourself, you can achieve. Even work didn't have to be misery. It didn't have to be drudgery. We had what my grandmother referred to the Sears Roebuck catalog.
Wow.
And we could look in that catalog and find something. Now, if we wanted to be extravagant, if we wanted to be out of our minds, she would just tell us, okay, well, this will require 9 weeks of X, Y,
Oh my
or
gosh.
Z.
So what would be extravagant? Give us an example. What would be an extravagant choice?
Something extravagant might be an entire 100-piece set of Hot Wheels or Matchboxes cars.
Wow.
But if you only picked 1 or 2, you could do that in about a week's time. And it was great. In fact, when the UPS truck would drive up, it was always something exciting and made us come up with new ideas. Grandma, what other things
Can I do for you?
do?
Right.
Exactly. So there were explicit statements made and there were implicit things that we observed. In my book, one of the things I talk about...
This is your new book?
Yes, how Trump is making Black America great again.
Which will be out?
This summer in July, it will be make for great reading, as Simon & Schuster will say. Buy and read my book, and we'll both profit. One of the...
It's like that UPS truck arriving.
Absolutely.
Horace's book is on the truck.
Absolutely. But one of the things is about success strategies.
Success strategy. Another perfectly timed little cliffhanger from Horace Cooper. Here with me, Sebastian Gorka, former strategist to President Donald J. Trump. This is America First. The book is How Trump is Making Black America Great Again.
Yes, it is.
When is it available for pre-order?
July 1st. Oh, it's available for pre-order right now.
Do it like that guy who wants to get his mini washboard. Order it right now. I'm Sebastian Gorka, back with more from Horace Cooper here on America First.
Portions of America First are brought to you by Job Creators Network.
If you own a small business, I'd love to know if you know how important you are, because you might not know just how important you are. In America, small businesses employ half of our workforce. 60 million Americans. They don't work for GE or Ford. They work for small businesses. In fact, America has 30 million small businesses. When they say too big to fail, remember that phrase from the bailouts? We think small businesses are too big to fail because they are the backbone of America. And so do our friends at the Job Creators Network. And they and I want to hear from you about how the Chinese coronavirus lockdown has impacted your business. Whether you work for a small business or whether you own a small business, I and the Job Creators Network want to hear your stories. So please call our voicemail number. It's 703-585-3668. That's our patriotmobile.com voicemail number. Write it down. 703-585-3668 and tell us your story about what this national emergency is doing to you and how state and local government shutdowns have affected you as a small business owner or as the employee of a small business owner. We are back with Horace Cooper on our Good Friday special first hour. Horace, you're talking about your new book. I didn't realize it was available for pre-order. I'm going to pre-order it right now. How Trump is making Black America great again. And you mentioned something about success strategies?
Success strategies. One of the things that is exceptionally helpful for any community, whether you're talking about blacks, whether you're talking about men, whether you're talking about women, it doesn't matter. There are certain techniques and strategies in life that are more advantageous than others. My grandmother helped me to adopt these kinds of success strategies. Do you know that if you get up at 4:30 in the morning and if you work for significant portions of the day, when it's time to go to bed, you can and you sleep fine. If you don't learn that, you may struggle with being able to get up in the morning and the like.
Or going to sleep.
Or going to sleep even, exactly. My grandmother helped me understand the benefit of hard work. I'll give an example. My grandmother never had a mortgage. When I was in junior high, she had built the final home that she would live in for the rest of her life, and it was the only brick home on the street, and she had it built a custom home and paid for it, for every single cent of it, out of savings.
So in cash?
In cash. Now, this is not the model of what we're told is possible in America. In the circumstances that she came from, we're told, well, it would never be possible. It couldn't happen. But here's the beauty. Before Dave Ramsey ever came along to talk to people about the importance of sacrifice, of saving, of making sure...
Rice and beans, beans and rice.
There was my grandmother showing what was in fact possible.
How grateful are you to your grandmother?
I'm unbelievably so. And the only lament that I have, the only sadness that I have, is that the value structure that I witnessed, that she demonstrated, was pervasive around everyone, and no one was allowed to contradict her, is no longer the dominant mindset that exists. And by the way, when I say this, I know that there are haters out there. Oh, you're just now criticizing blacks. Here's the truth. Black Americans are the canary in the coal mine. Mm-hmm. We are increasingly becoming a nation where people are entitled. We're increasingly becoming a nation where faith in and of itself isn't important. We're increasingly becoming a nation where commitment isn't important. When my grandmother was a child, a lot of people don't realize this. I mentioned this in my book, but Black Americans were the most likely two-parent households in America.
That's incredible. And today, it's a disaster.
The least likely.
The least likely. We're talking to Horace Cooper, Project 21 Senior Fellow with the National Center for Public Policy Research, and his new book that you can order now, and I'm going to do it right now, is How Trump is Making Black America Great Again. I'm Sebastian Gorka. This is America First on the Salem Radio Network. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's the one with my photograph, the blue background, and click the notifications bell twice, because that's just how sneaky Google is. Back with Horace in a moment.
I know Sebastian well. Listen to him. He's with us.
And you're listening to this show, so you're with him as well. That's my old boss, President Trump. I never mention my own book. I mention my guest books. But if you're sitting at home, if you're watching this, if you're listening as you walk the dog, don't forget my latest book, The War for America's Soul, is available. Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Does anybody else sell books? Oh, if you want a signed copy, go to my website, sebgorka.com, SEBGORKA, for The War on America's Soul. How did we get here, and what is it going to take our country back? We are here for our special Good Friday program with none other than Horace Cooper, who we've decided has to be a regular on the show. He is that good. And I'm torn, Horace. I wanted to talk geostrategy. I wanted to talk China and China virus, but you've so got me in this rhythm now of your personal stories, where your values came from. I have to continue with a question that's related to that. So you are saddened, clearly, that what you learned on your grandmother's knee is not the dominant mindset. You are saddened that the role of faith has been minimized in our nation, and also used the word in the last segment, the importance of commitment has also been diluted. What is Horace Cooper's interpretation of why that is the case? What happened to our country?
So, I think a lot of us aren't paying attention to what happens to society. Right now, in the middle of this pandemic, we are experiencing ideas and concepts as solutions, many of which have been pushed to us for some time and we've rejected.
Yes.
The left has said for some time that why don't we just give every person who wants it just a stipend?
Yeah, free money.
Free money, $20,000, $30,000, even $40,000 a year. And if you want to work, you can. But if you don't have to. And you say, oh, well, no one thinks that. Absolutely. Our elected officials have been talking about this concept for a while. Mr. Yang, when he ran for president, talked about a much more modest version, but
he popularized it.
But he popularized the concept. And all that would happen is, as soon as you did it, it just would get expanded and expanded up until the point. Americans today are really, really worried. And when someone offers a solution that's really just repackaged leftism, they may accept it. What happened in the 1960s is repackaged leftism was offered the Great Society as a technique. And it is this idea that from Washington, D.C., bureaucrats, people that you pay, can be a substitute for mom and dad, can be a substitute for the faith chapel, can be a substitute for robust and strong communities, and can also be a substitute for personal effort, for the ability of individuals to control their own destiny. We tried that, and largely Black America was impacted by it, and it has done so very, very much in an adverse way.
Why is there seemingly, and I say this cognizant as a leftist would put it, of my being a white man, seemingly it seems as if there aren't Black community leaders who are effectively pushing back on this and who are saying enough on dependence on things from the outside. It is time for us to shape our own destinies. What happened to that leadership stratum in the Black community?
So for too many leaders, they actually benefit from the expansion of the system. Now, I mentioned right before the break that when my grandmother was a child, that some 85+% of all Black children were born in stable two-parent households, and importantly, more than any other group by race.
Incredible. So traditional classical values were to be found there.
If you looked at federal prison numbers, Black men were the least likely to be in prison or incarcerated by the federal government. Today, Black Americans are disproportionately so. People say, what are you talking about? Because they're not familiar with the history. We had more Black millionaires in the 1920s, in the 1930s, even at the beginning of the 20th century. And you have to go all the way up, even as the population has exploded, to the 1980s before you see that number rise again. For a long period, what we saw was a decline in that. Well, how is it possible if you could have segregation mandated by government for people to succeed. There's a reason for that. It is because we have shifted from the importance of individuals being able to take responsibility. No one justifies the government mistreating people. No one justifies depriving people of their rights merely on the basis of their race. But no one should also justify untested techniques to ameliorate that problem when everywhere they've been tried, even on a small scale, they have failed. Now that we know trillions of dollars later, decades later, this doesn't work, guess what? The second a crisis appears, immediately the same solutions occur. Now, it isn't just blacks. Every single group that is called vulnerable, when they get caught up into this, they end up being stymied by the very same consequences.
The ideology of victimhood and how it denudes whole communities of futures because they say basically by recognizing themselves as victims that they have lost control of their own destiny. It is utterly un-American. He's Horace Cooper. The book is How Trump is Making Black America Great Again. Order it now. I'm Sebastian Gorka, former strategist to President Trump. This is America First on the Salem Radio Network. Back with our good friend of Project 21, Horace Cooper, after these messages. We are back with our friend Horace Cooper, who I do hope starts his own podcast soon because he has a rare talent and he has stories to tell. In the last minute and a half we have of this, our first hour of our Good Friday program here in America First, what is, given where we are right now, thousands of dead in America, thousands across the globe, what is your message from your faith fixed perspective to the American people, Horace?
My peace brings me peace. My faith brings me peace. And I think for the American people that should be the place that they turn. I looked about a couple weeks ago at the end of March, and Pew reported that 55% of Americans are saying that they pray more. We need that number to go up, and I imagine as this weekend comes along, you'll see that. God answers prayers. Google reported around that same time that they're seeing an explosion in the number of people asking about specific prayers associated with the coronavirus. Now, I believe that what we should do as a people is look at this major religious holiday as an occasion to be a little bit more somber, to be a little bit more thoughtful, and to bring to our Creator the prayers that we want, those that are good for our neighbors and those that are good for ourselves.
You heard the man. It's not just about what you can stream on your streaming service. It's not just about finishing the home project that you've left undone for months. This is a time to get closer to God. Let's do it together as a nation. Thank you, Horace. I'm Sebastian Gorka. This is America First on the Salem Radio Network, live streaming on YouTube, Facebook, and don't forget, we post every hour on Instagram TV. Just look for me, my name, Sebastian Gorka, and America First.